Hello and welcome to today's episode. Well, I've rebuilt the studio from the ground up, and quite literally I got building permits and construction personnel, and we spent 5 years building this brand new studio for the channel. Or I just sort of moved around some of the stuff in the hopes of making the channel a little bit better looking. I've been struggling with this green screen idea, and now that everyone's happy with the idea of bullet points behind me, I wanted to try and up our game a little bit. So I hope that this new layout works better for everybody. So leave your comments below. Your feedback was fantastic for the titles. Everybody liked them. I didn't think almost nobody said that they didn't like them. So here we are. Anyway, so today we are looking at planning your character's future. Now, this is not necessarily something that you need to do for every single character. For a one-shot, you certainly don't need to do it. But if you're planning on playing a campaign, there is a certain joy that you can get out of having a long-term plan for your character and seeing how that changes and evolves. The GM is not the only person who needs to have a plan. You do too, and you'll see that there's a huge amount of benefit. So we're going to look at why plan for a future. We're going to look at what should your plan look like. We're going to look at how do you actually plan it out. Then we're going to look at how do you actually make it happen. It's one thing having a plan, but bringing it to action in a role-playing game can be a bit daunting. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at how do you work with your others, your fellow players, how do you make that happen? And then, of course, we're going to talk about role-playing itself being so chaotic, so wonderfully complex, because we've got all of these different people playing the same game with us, and they're going to change things around, aren't they? That's just the nature of how life works. So let's look at why plan a future. So character growth is something that we look for in films, we look for in TV shows, and we look for in books. We like to get a sense that the character has progressed. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but principally it's because we as people like to change and progress and become better at stuff and grow and learn from our mistakes. Well, hopefully anyway. So our characters should be doing the same thing. Our characters should be evolving and should be changing and should be adapting and growing as they go. Now, what that does is that gives you also a huge amount of satisfaction. There's nothing better than planning out a character arc, especially if it's a complicated one or if it's a difficult one. Let's say your character arc is literally going to be that your character starts off working together, then becomes negative, gets involved in the dark side, and then returns to the light side. That's a very interesting journey. And it's one that's going to take a lot of role-playing from your behalf, but as well as a lot of cooperation from all of your fellow players and from your game master. She's going to have to make sure that your game is adjusted accordingly to accommodate your journey. But don't worry, it's not like you're prescribing the game. And it's also, and I need to make this very, very important, this is not you hogging the spotlight. This is not you taking over the game so that you can run your personal story. Every player at the table should have something planned for their character, and I've advised GMs on this particular topic that they should look at one or two key adventures centered around you and your character's growth, and then of course everybody else gets their one or two adventures as well. So don't feel like this is you taking over the game and being a bossy player. It's absolutely not. It's you raising your game to the next level. So the enjoyment factor is planning out this journey and then watching it unfold, and then watching how the other players have to interact with your character and how they change and what comes out of that. Discovering how this whole thing plays out is absolutely a pure joy, especially if you've got a plan on where you're going. Now, it is an absolute challenge, there's no doubt about it. You are going to have to make some tough decisions, and you're going to have to get into some emotionally difficult situations. That paladin who doesn't agree with the rest of the party, are they going to abandon that party? No, they're going to try everything they can to perhaps bring that party back to the light, to redeem that party. But what about a paladin who starts going down the dark path and realizes it? What about their journey that they need to go on to then find themselves and then come back again? It's the ultimate kind of story. It's the ultimate kind of role-playing, in my opinion, and it's something that you can do, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So, what should a future plan look like? Well, as with any narrative, and if you've watched any of the GM videos on this channel, you'll know you need a beginning, you need a middle, and you need a conclusion. Now, conventional storytelling tells us that your beginning point, your beginning status, where we find the character, where we meet the character, should be as opposite to your concluding point as possible. So they need to be literally poles apart. Now, that might be a bit extreme, but it gives you a starting point. So if you want to play this, let's take a science fiction analogy. Let's say you want to play a Jedi who goes on this journey of starting out light side unquestioning. Does that mean you have to end in the dark side unquestioning? No, it means you need to end in the light side where you have questioned. You have journeyed, you've gone to the dark side, you've made mistakes, but you're now on the light side and you are now happy in that space that you are in. You are now content, you are now at peace, you are now a true Jedi. You have found your center, you have found the meaning behind the Force. You're no longer questioning, you're no longer doubtful, you're no longer angry, you're no longer depressed, you're no longer vengeful, you are now at peace. So the journey doesn't necessarily mean that if you want to end as a good character, you have to start as a bad character. It might mean that you start as a self-centered character and you end off as a character who now does good for the community rather than just for the self, and that you derive satisfaction from that action rather than from the personal action. So, in other words, this is a journey that you are crafting specifically, and it's a journey that you can take with any of your characters in any setting whatsoever. So you need a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, yes, your beginning needs to be as far away from your end as possible. But we don't talk about, oh, my character's poor, so I want my character to be rich by the end of it. That's a very external goal. Generally, character growth is internal. My character starts the game questioning everything, or starts the game angry and just violent, and I just attack everything, and I just kill everything, and I just pound everything to death. That's what my character does. But by the end of it, I want my character to be perhaps a pacifist, or to have realized that violence might be a means to an end, but that cold, cool logic is a better way to go. So now, how am I going to do that? How am I going to go from that stage to that stage? Well, what's the middle ground? What's in the middle, or what is the furthest point away from both of those goals? So the Jedi analogy works quite nicely because we've got such polar opposites. Good Jedi, bad Jedi. Sith versus the actual Jedi. So the exact opposite of both of those is a neutral Jedi, or is someone who no longer believes in the Force. So that's someone who's gone right the way. We've moved as far away as possible from our starting point, but we're also as far away as possible from our ultimate end goal. So for you as the creator of this narrative, you need to look at that journey and you need to work out, if I start here and this is where my midpoint is going to be and this is where my end point is going to be, how do I do it? How do I shift them? Now, you're not working out the adventures that need to happen for your character to go on. That you're not doing. You're not working out the relationships that your character has with the fellow party members. Not yet. And there's a reason for that. You need to start to seed stuff. And that is going to grow things into the other characters, into the GM's story. Now, what's a seed? If you haven't watched the GM videos, a seed is really just, it's an analogy for planting an idea. Now, in script writing and novel writing, we talk about foreshadowing. So if you see a dagger at the beginning of the book, in the middle of the book, you're going to see that same dagger again, but now in a different way. And then at the end of the book, you're going to see how that dagger is used. So we seed something at the beginning, we then let it mature and grow during the middle, and then at the end, we then see the final product, the grown tree, if you like. So I use the idea of seeding. And the way that you seed is incredibly subtle. You don't have to lay down giant markers. Let's take our Jedi analogy, for example, because that's working quite well. So we're starting off with this very confused, frustrated Jedi who perhaps has gone through the academy and has graduated with questions. Why shouldn't we love? Why shouldn't we be passionate? Surely that passion, that love is what gets us to do things. It's our motivator. Rather than this neutrality, which almost seems like stagnation. It doesn't seem like we're moving forward. how do I start to seed that that Jedi is ultimately, perhaps 6 months down the line in adventuring, going to renounce their ways completely? Well, seeding could be that my Jedi begins to want to differentiate themselves from the Jedi Order. I'm not wearing brown robes and that cream-colored Y-shaped thing. My Jedi is wearing something else. My Jedi is going to abandon that and is going to do something else. My Jedi is going to step away from that and is going to start dressing entirely in red because it's passionate and it shows conviction and dedication and loyalty and all the things that red brings with it. Now, all that you're doing from a role-playing perspective is that you're saying to the GM and your fellow players, my character goes to the market. I'm looking for a dressmaker, or I'm looking for someone who sells armor. I want it, but I want it coated in red. Absolute red. That's all you do. And then you wear your red armor. And occasionally, if you're busy role-playing, you can say, right, I put on my red armor with my red cape, and I ignite my blue lightsaber. This lightsaber, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't belong. Now, we're not making our Jedi go to the dark side. That's a different type of character journey that we don't want to do. We want to have our Jedi lose their faith in the Jedi Order and in the Jedi way. So a couple adventures later, things are going on. You're going through your GM's meticulously crafted plot. You're helping your fellow players' characters evolve and grow. Remember, it's important to support your fellow players. Your character then says, I want to go and find a different crystal color. I want to change the color of my lightsaber. People still think of me as a Jedi. Can I make it so that the lightsaber isn't a smooth beam of energy, but this sort of crackling, fiery type of thing? Yes, I can. Okay, good. What do I need to do that? All right, so that's an adventure that we need to go on to find this artificer who can help us do that, or this old Jedi who knows a trick on how to make it all flamey and stuff. And I want mine to be orange or yellow, but like a fiery yellow, not this sort of lemon yellow. I wanted to have passion, because that's my character. It's about passion, 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 passion. Right, so you've seeded, and you've seeded. So seeding is about dropping these little ideas that your character is changing. And then once your character gets to the point where they've renounced the Jedi Order, and that can be verbal, I renounce the Jedi. I'm done. They're wrong. The Sith are not right either. They're also wrong. I'm going to find my own way. Then perhaps the Jedi casts aside the lightsaber, chooses not to use it, but chooses to use something else. Or perhaps now renounces their Jedi ways altogether and stops using their powers. Now is the time where you then have to move in and move forward with that whole idea. So this is how we seed things. You now need to talk and share with your GM. You should have been doing this along beforehand anyway, but now it's critical. Now when you renounce your powers, I'm no longer a Jedi. I'm not using the Force anymore. The Force is a delusion. It's a trap that ensnares us and tries to take away any sense of individuality that we might have. I renounce it. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. And you are welcome to do that. You are absolutely welcome to do that. Now you start talking to the GM and to your fellow players. I want my Jedi to realize that the power of the Force is needed to save lives and can be used for good and possibly can be used for evil. Or perhaps I want some kind of temptation. GM, can you work that out for me? But, and here is the critical thing, you don't go to the GM with a pre-made adventure. You don't say, right, I've written out an adventure here for my character, which is perfect. It's going to show exactly how the Jedi get her back into the fold. You don't do that. You sit and you chat with your fellow GM, and you chat with your players. I want my character to feel isolated, to feel alone, to feel as if there's no one there. Absolutely fine. Talk to your fellow players and see what they say. Now, sometimes you get players who go, it's all very emotional, and I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with your Jedi abandoning us. Now, instead of digging in your heels, instead of becoming stubborn, saying, but I've planned this from the beginning, this is my story, it's my character, it's what my character will do. No. Now you start to work around that. Because remember, you are playing a game with other people. It's as fun for them as it is for you, but you can cause them to stop having fun. And that, I think, is the mark of a bad player, is when you cause other players to no longer have fun. So if they're not comfortable with your character, say, becoming a drug addict and being difficult to work with, and admittedly, that would be a challenge, you would have to make sure that you state categorically that whilst your character might become a drug addict or might renounce the Force, that you are still going to be useful and practical. There must be some value to still keeping your character around. Bear this in mind. Maybe I should have said that up front. Your character has to always remain useful, even if they become surly, or if they become angry or aggressive or questioning, or they must still go along with the plan. Bearing in mind, and this is a great example of a character story, is if you go way back, I'm talking back decades, sadly, literally, it is almost now 2 decades, but if you go all the way back to the original X-Men, look at Wolverine's character. He started off as a loner. That entire first movie was about him being condescending towards the X-Men. Do you wear spandex all the time? Not wanting to work together until eventually he started to see the benefits. And then he transformed and he changed and he started to fall in love with these characters. And then the characters died and he went on this journey. And then we watched Logan, literally, almost 18 years after the first film was made, and we see that he's now become this really dedicated supporter of Professor X. Look at that character journey. That's an 18-year campaign, folks. That is a character who started off vehemently against the people, questioned, fought against, fought with, and then ended up being the ultimate champion of that group. So that's what I'm talking about. When you plan together, is you sit down and you say, well, this is what I'd like to have happen. I'd like my character to realize the error of their ways. I want to be able to have this kind of fight or this sequence, or I would like something like that. Leave it up to the GM to then incorporate it into their game. Now, if they don't do that, that's the GM's call, and you have to respect that because it's their game. However, you can ask them after the session, hey, are we going to do that character thing, or are you just not happy with it? If they're not happy with it, maybe it's something that's beyond their capability, it's beyond their scope. Absolutely fine. Send them over to the channel and let them watch a couple of videos on how to work with character stories and the like, because you can make such a better game. Now, this last slide, I think it's the last slide. It could be the last slide. Maybe it's the last slide. Let's see. This slide here is all about role-playing. You have to adapt, you have to change, and you have to modify. I could sit right now and say, right, my character, the character of Guy, is going to lose 50 pounds by next year. That's a character journey that my character wants to go on, is to get thin. It's not going to happen, I can tell you that right now. There are too many things in the way and not enough incentive really to do it. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that your character's goals might not be achieved because of the dynamic of the party. If there are other players whose characters' stories are unfolding and they're in conflict with yours, or they start to drive a wedge between the player group, you need to sit back and realize it's just a story. It's just role-playing. So as much as I am passionate about it, frequently I step back and I go, you know what, that was a great plan, it was going to be a great story, it was going to be wonderful, but I need to adapt and change because the people around me, my friends, are not going in that direction. So either I need to adapt my story to figure out how to get it there later on, I need to change my story to figure out how it can fit with the group, or I need to modify it in such a way that the outcome is different from what it was, but it's still got some base chords in there which I originally found. That's just the nature of teamwork and working with one another, and that's something that we just have to live with. There's nothing that we can do about that. So learning to do it gracefully and learning to enjoy it, that's what I had to do when I was becoming a GM, was I had to learn how to enjoy others changing my plans. And it's something that does take a bit of getting used to, I won't lie. But if you do it properly, it can be fantastic. It really can be magic. And so with that, thankfully, I think, because that was the right title, it brings us to the idea that creating a character future, creating a character plan, using seeds, planting them out there. My character goes to temple to worship. My character starts to pick up a manual on how to be a better scuba diver, whatever. Seed it, change it, adapt it, talk about it, and then experience it, and you will be amazed. You'll absolutely be amazed at how it elevates your game. So that, in a nutshell, is how you create a plan for your character to evolve and to change in a meaningful way. So hit the like button if you like the video, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of these. Let me know, is this new studio setup working out for you? Can you tell a difference? Maybe you can't. Who knows? Who knows? It's well, you do. So leave your comments below, and I will be absolutely thrilled to see your feedback on the subject. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the very happiest of playing.